My presentation today is going to be talking about some of the ways that United Soybean farmers, especially soybean farmers, are investing in the future, and where we think we need to go to improve the products that we produce to satisfy our end users. So I think what's key is that the United Soybean Board now has a vision that we want to think beyond the bushel. We want to understand there is more to soybeans than just growing yield. We want to understand that the components of that soybean is what really gets marketed. And we should have a say, or we should have opportunity to be able to improve those. Innovative products that we're looking into is currently, you might have heard of the product called oleic soybean oil. This is a product that has come about because of a concern that we had that our trans fat levels were not quite where they needed to be, and the fact that our partially hydrogenated oil has now been frowned upon and been taken off a lot of shelves. So we've lost quite a bit of market in the soybean industry from our oil side. So along with the seed companies and processors, we've had an opportunity to bring forth a high oleic soybean oil, which really fits into a lot of those lacking areas that we had prior. So we're really trying to regain an old market that we had that has been obviously picked up by other oil competition. And our ability to do so really involves the whole value chain. So we really have to have people that are involved not only from the seed processing, but the farmers, the elevators, the processors, and the end users to try and come together to come up with a solution. And this is one that we have done. This past year, we grew 450,000 acres of high oleic soybeans in Indiana, Ohio, some in Iowa and Minnesota. And our anticipation is that we will continue to grow this product as demand grows, and we could be looking up to 18 million acres in 4 or 5 years. So that's a pretty exciting story to tell, that we came together as a value chain and we worked together to bring a new product to fruition. There's some challenges that we find when we look at the total value chain. If you look at the beginning of the value chain, the seed companies, the farmers, and the elevators, we really all kind of concentrate our efforts on what we get paid on. And right now we get paid on just bushels. All we get paid on is yield. So that when we go to talk to our seed companies, who they get their marketing signals from, we tell them, well, send me the best bean you have that will yield the most. I mean, because we don't really think farther beyond the bushel because that's how we get paid. But when you get to the processors and the end users, you find that they really deal in components or constituents, oil, meal, amino acids, those kind of things. So they're really talking about the parts of the bean where we're talking about just the whole bean. And that disconnect in that value chain has become quite large. We think we should have a say as farmers in that front end to say, hey, if you want a better bean, let's come up with a system that we could get paid on the components and still have the opportunity to raise more dollars per acre or think beyond the bean by increasing components that are desired in a soybean. So we think there's great potential there, and one example is the high oleic soybeans. We know that in order for farmers to use them, they have to have as table stakes yield and agronomic traits that are going to allow us to be successful in the production of those. And that is where working with seed companies has really helped out well. They've brought that product, high oleic soy, into their elite genetics, which allows us to keep our yield as well as our agronomic package available for farmers. So that concern about having to take in a product that is not going to yield as well or get paid as much on a per acre basis should be dissipating with the efforts that we're putting forth. The United Soybean Board has invested quite heavily in the high oleic soybean effort. Originally, they brought forth the concerns that we had about 20 years ago with the potential to start losing a market because of health issues, the trans fat issues. And we started that conversation along with seed companies and other key partners in the entire food chain. And we said, hey, we got to come up with a solution, okay? So we put together a board called QUALISOY, and QUALISOY consists of 4 United Soybean farmers, which are volunteers, along with, there's 22 people on the board, so 18 more are included from industry. And we really wanted to focus specifically on oil because we knew that was going to be a large market share that we had lost. The seed companies invested in the traits themselves, like $130 million to try and bring these traits forward. But what became the challenge is that that's only one part of the entire chain. How do we go about bringing this to fruition to the end users, to those people that actually take the oil and utilize it in their daily lives, making, whatever friable foods or baked pastries or whatever that are going to really drive the demand for this oil. So we invested meaning the United Soybean Board, invested in expanding the maturity levels of the soybeans that seed companies, DuPont Pioneer and Monsanto, invested originally, and said, hey, we think it's going to be a real big draw. We think there's going to be real potential here to grow more. So we want to have it so more of a geographic area of soybean growers can have the opportunity to get in on high oleic soybeans. So we invested there. We put $8 million per company, both in Pioneer, Replenish, or Monsanto's Vistive Gold, and allowed them to expand their maturity levels into their elite hybrids. So we think that at some point, when we have 18 million acres, we're going to have a very large geographic area that they can draw from, and that's going to allow them to be that step farther ahead when the time comes. And then we also invested $4 million into developing information for farmers to feel comfortable with that. Let them understand that the yield drag's not there, the agronomics is there. And we also invested in working with food companies to say, here's a new oil that we are producing, here's how it will work for you. So we started doing research into functionality and performance of high oleic oil to allow them to see this is what the opportunities are coming down the road. So we will be supplying a consistent supply, an abundant supply, and a high quality supply of this high oleic oil. And then we also talked with the industrial areas about what potential does this high quality oil have for uses in industrial area. We know the green revolution is still going on, and we think that there's possibilities in industrial area to really focus on utilizing more oil in industrial uses. United Soybean farmers produce a very high quality product, and we do that through sustainable practices. I mean, we're utilizing as many conservation practices as we can to benefit our farms, realizing that farmers are only stewards of the land, so we need to treat that land as well as we can to keep producing the type of products that we want. And you ask about QUALISOY, the questions on those. I have had questions on that, but the question has been more targeted towards meal, and that's a whole nother story that we need to bring forth. We know that 67% of that bean is meal. And we've already found a way to improve our oil to a new market, so now let's focus a little bit on meal. Even though we produce a very high quality, we can always find ways to make it better, ways to improve it. So we've started a group called the Value Task Force about 5 years ago, and our vision was to bring forth different opportunities to increase the value of the meal side. And we sunsetted that a year ago, and then we rolled that organization into QUALISOY. So now QUALISOY not only works on the oil side through high oleic, it's also working on meal improvements. And just had a meeting this morning and talked about those exact things, about how we need to find a way to differentiate our meal, even though it's very good today, to be that leading edge inventor or innovator of the next products that are going to come from meal to benefit our end user, which majority of that is livestock. So how can we make them perform better with the basis of the meal that we produce? So the question is, why do I feel that it's important for me to speak today on this particular investment of United Soybean Board's dollars? I think we have a great message to bring forth, to let our customers, whether it's domestic or in this case, worldwide customers, know that we're doing a good job. We do a lot of things very good, but we still need to take advantage of the opportunities that will come down the road to improve our products. We're very fortunate in the United States to have one of the best infrastructures in the world to deliver that consistent, high-quality product. We need to take advantage of that. So let's differentiate ourselves from those that still want to do just bushels to those that want to get a higher quality product and find better performance and bring more value to the value chain. I've been on the United Soybean Board this will be my 9th year. And I have had the opportunity to go abroad and meet my customers, meet those ones that do the actual purchasing. And they're fascinated when they talk with farmers. Farmers are pretty much upfront about all that they do. They know what they know, just like every other part of the industry, but we realize we're as important part of that value chain as anybody else in there. And the more we can tell our story, I mean, who is better to tell the story about farmers than farmers? The more we tell our story, the more they get connected to what we do in the highest quality that we can produce. And like I said, we're very fortunate that we live in a country that we have those opportunities. But we really need to get out there and understand the different cultures, need to understand the different needs that different countries have. I've never been disappointed on a trip that I have taken through United Soybean Board. I grow soybeans in 15-inch rows, okay, across thousands of acres. And when I harvested, I realized that about more than half of every other row, at least every other row plus some, 50+%, is going to be exported. So I need to know my market and I need to understand what they want. And it's fascinating that we have the opportunity to do so. The opportunity that USEC brings forward or brings forth to not only United Soybean Board, but also farmers that benefit from the United Soybean work and also their QSSBs in each state, really helps us to understand and stay in contact with our potential buyers of our product. And this is something that not many commodity groups out there are able to do. We've been very fortunate that they have a organization that works hard every day to understand what's the next market, or how can we improve to make our next market more favorable, or how do we gain more access to a certain market. And that's good to know that we have somebody working for us that hard to keep us, allowing us to do what we do and love to do as farmers, and that's produce soybeans and other commodities. Talk to the United Soybean Board in St. Louis. They're all affiliated with QUALISOY. Actually, QUALISOY came from initiation from USB, and more than willing to answer questions as necessary.